I'm a dangerous person because I mind about things. Only the other day I was inquiring of an entire bed of old-fashioned roses, forced to listen to my ramblings on the meaning of the universe as I sat cross-legged in the lotus position in front of them. It seems to me self-evident that we cannot have capitalism without capital and, very importantly, that the ultimate source of all economic capital is nature's capital. I think we'd be very foolish to expect that we can just import everything from somewhere else and imagine that that's going to last forever and ever and ever. Painting transports me into another dimension which, quite literally, refreshes parts of the soul which other activities can't reach. I believe passionately that everyone has a particular God-given ability. There is very good evidence indeed that one of the major reasons for this horror in Syria was a drought that lasted for about 5 or 6 years, which meant that huge numbers of people in the end had to leave the land. The demand for organic food is growing at a remarkable rate. Consumers have made it clear that they want organic produce, and every sector of the food chain is responding, with the kind of results we have just seen. A jostling scrum of office buildings so mediocre that the only way you ever remember them is by the frustration they induce, like a basketball team standing shoulder to shoulder between you and the Mona Lisa. As human beings we suffer from an innate tendency to jump to conclusions, to judge people too quickly and to pronounce them failures or heroes without due consideration of the actual facts and ideals of the period. I think we're going to find, with climate change and everything else, things like global warming and goodness knows what else and the cost of fuel for a start, that things are going to become very complicated. It is baffling, I must say, that in our modern world we have such blind trust in science and technology that we all accept what science tells us about everything, until, that is, it comes to climate science. My Rainforests project has 3 main elements. Firstly, to determine how much funding the rainforest countries need to reorientate their economies so that the trees are worth more alive than dead. If you think about your and my grandchildren, this is what really worries me. I don't want them, if I'm still alive by then, to say, "Why didn't you do something about it, when you could have done? Why can't we have those curves and arches that express feeling in design? What is wrong with them? Why has everything got to be vertical, straight, unbending, only at right angles, and functional?" I find myself born into this particular position. I'm determined to make the most of it, and to do whatever I can to help. And I hope I leave things behind a little bit better than I found them. There is no doubt that we live in an age of unprecedented, and sometimes terrifying, technological advance where the speed of advance so often outstrips the necessary ethical considerations. This was one of those special occasions when I could actually feel the inner appreciation of the beauty of the moment passing like an electric current through the brush in my hand. We have spent the best part of the past century enthusiastically testing the world to utter destruction, not looking closely enough at the long-term impact our actions will have. Fast food may appear to be cheap food and, in the literal sense it often is, but that is because huge social and environmental costs are being excluded from the calculations. Humility is to make a right estimate of oneself. It is no humility for a man to think less of himself than he ought, though it might rather puzzle him to do that. You have to give this much to the Luftwaffe. When it knocked down our buildings, it did not replace them with anything more offensive than rubble. We did that. All I'm saying is that there is a price to be paid at the sharp end. Environmentally and everywhere else. For the food that is produced in a particular way. A large number of us have developed a feeling that architects tend to design houses for the approval of fellow architects and critics, not for the tenants. We should be treating, I think, the whole issue of climate change and global warming with a far greater degree of priority than I think is happening now. Something as curious as the monarchy won't survive unless you take account of people's attitudes. After all, if people don't want it, they won't have it. Any difficulties which the world faces today will be as nothing compared to the full effect which global warming will have on the worldwide economy. If your children want to alter society, listen to their reasons and the idealism behind them. Don't crush them with some clever remark straight away. It is frightening how dependent on drugs we are all becoming and how easy it is for doctors to prescribe them as the universal panacea for our ills. I think we need to recover the depth, the subtlety, the generosity of imagination, the respect for wisdom that so marked Islam in its great ages. To avert disaster, we have not only to teach men to make things, but to teach them to have complete moral control over what they make. As technology advances at an alarming pace, the place of drawing remains as valid as ever in the creation of art and architecture. Climate change should be seen as the greatest challenge to face man and treated as a much bigger priority in the United Kingdom. Christianity was literally born in the Middle East, and we must not forget our Middle Eastern brothers and sisters in Christ. One of the main reasons for the conflict in Syria, and the terrorism that it spawned, is climate change and drought. Forests are the world's air conditioning system, the lungs of the planet, and we are on the verge of switching it off. The whole imposing edifice of modern medicine is like the celebrated Tower of Pisa, slightly off balance. We don't, in a sensible world, want to hand on an increasingly dysfunctional world to our grandchildren. Father told me that if I ever met a lady in a dress like yours, I must look her straight in the eyes. I was totally absorbed. I was in another world, or another dimension, all sense of time evaporated.